Hey everyone, this is Rob, Maximum RD, and I am responding to the open tag from Jboypacman regarding my thoughts and comments on the 16-bit era. Make sure I'm in there. I think that's better. Yeah, I just wanted to give my response and say, yeah, I do have very, very fond and vivid memories of the 16-bit era. When it first hit, pretty much, I remember, we didn't have, well, at least I didn't, or we didn't have the internet as it is today, obviously. So, information at your fingertips just wasn't there. So everything was a surprise to me. And I remember I was walking downtown Toronto, and I walked by an import gaming shop, which was not as typical back then as it is these days. And in the window, on a 20-inch display, they had the Super Famicom, which of course would later become our Super Nintendo, displaying Super Mario World, and wow, my eyes popped out of my head. My jaw dropped. I could not believe the colors in this game and the bright levels and the sound. They had a little speaker out front playing the sound, and I must have stood there for half an hour, seriously, just watching this demo of the game. Prior to that, I had the 8-bit Nintendo like many kids. I was very happy and satisfied with that and thought, this is it. This is the best home video game system. That's all you're ever going to need, right? Young and naive. But yeah, when I saw the Super Mario World playing on the Famicom, they were charging some ridiculous price for it, of course, being an import store. And also, it was very rare to get import hardware back in those days. And they were charging something crazy, like I think it was approaching like $500 Canadian for this system with Super Mario World. And honestly, if I had looked down at my feet and found $500, without a second thought, I would have gone in there and bought that system. Just the thoughts in my head of owning this system, being the only one having the Super Nintendo, or so I guess Super Famicom as it was known then, to have the 16-bit Nintendo system that we had been waiting for. I was just blown away by it, and needless to say, I couldn't get it, and I waited for months and months and months. But I think what ended up happening at some point, I had sold all my Nintendo equipment. I didn't have a lot of money back in those days. I could only ever afford one system if I was lucky, the occasional game. Maybe get a game on my birthday or a special occasion. So yeah, I was waiting and waiting, and eventually, of course, I got into it. But the funny little thing about that also, me and a friend of mine, Tony, who I still am in contact with these days, we just had this thing. We had that syndrome, if you've heard, the grass is always greener. As you say, the grass is always greener on the other side. And what that refers to is it always looks better what the other person has, basically. And I remember we kept going back and forth between Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. Whatever system I had, he would have the other system, and vice versa. And we would go and I could have Mario World and Zelda Link to the Past and whatever, and he would have Sonic and some racing games and Mortal Kombat, and I'd be like, wow. And it was so funny. I can only attribute it to being young and silly and just wanting everything, but you can't have everything. And so yeah, 2 or 3 times, I think at least, we had gone back and forth between having each system. And then finally we reached the point where, for whatever reason, we were finally able to obtain both systems, and then we would just trade cartridges back and forth and what have you. But it was a great time. The 16-bit era stands out in my mind, one of the greatest eras of video gaming. To me, the move from 8 to 16-bit to me still was the most shocking, was because maybe in part because it was the most unexpected. By the time Sony hit with the 32-bit, we had seen some other things. We had seen, I think, computers with voodoo cards and 3D and things like that. And it hit with a very primitive form of 3D when, it was still amazing to have in a home console, of course, but I think we had seen it, or at least had an indication of it. So I don't think it was as much of a surprise as the transition from 8 to 16-bit. And as far as my memory of 16-bit gaming, I'll have to say Zelda: Link to the Past, still my fondest memory of 16-bit gaming. I just remember playing it through, loving it, playing it probably for about 18 hours straight the first time. And I was just so absorbed. It was everything the previous 8-bit Zelda was, but like on steroids. It was absolutely amazing. So those are my thoughts on the 16-bit era. Absolutely incredible, great memories from that time, great systems, Sonic and Sega Genesis. Differences enough between the two systems. You had big sprites and very colorful, vivid graphics on the Super Nintendo. Now you had a more muted palette on the Sega Genesis, but you had the speed, and it was more of an attitude system, So I like the fact that both systems were actually quite different. They were both 16-bit based, but both quite different. And to look at a game running on both systems, you could usually tell which system you were looking at. And it was those differences that made both systems desirable. So you couldn't go wrong with either system basically, but it was always nice if you could have both. But anyways, yeah, that's my thoughts on the 16-bit era. Thanks to Jboypacman for the open tag, and Rob out.